Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
People are very studious. That's what I like to see.
Let us know where you're at in the chat. We'd love to kind of know where people are coming from to join with us today. And we really appreciate you guys joining us, taking a listen. Fort Lauderdale, Long Beach, all warm places. Costa Rica. Hi, Nicholas. Florida. You guys are all in hot spots.
Yeah, this is solid.
How have things been going this August? While we kind of wait for some people to flow in, we'll start in a couple minutes. Everybody really focused on revenue management?
They should be.
Yeah.
Always. Greta, love that.
Yeah. And are you guys, is anyone who's attending here today also attending DARM, either in person or via the digital pass? Awesome. For anyone who doesn't know DARM, here's a link to the website. Pretty cool conference coming up. One of my favorites in the space. Really good content. We'll all be here, right?
Yes, Luke and I will be there. Yep.
Yeah.
Nashville.
I will be as well.
Journey will be here.
Chile.
Next week.
That's awesome. Yeah, it should be a real good conference, and so we'll be talking about some trends, to get you guys prepped for it. And then if you weren't planning to attend DARM, they do have digital passes, so you can watch it from your computer or from your couch, if you don't want to head up to Nashville.
And Johnny, you've been to all of them since they started, or because this is our first one, Luke and I. This is our first DARM show.
I've been to quite a few of them. I went to the first one and was a speaker there. I missed the second one, and then the third one I spoke on a number of panels, and then I think this is the fourth show. So it hasn't been around a super long time yet.
Yeah, I've heard great things, so we're definitely excited.
It's a fun show. Awesome. Well, we'll kind of let people flow in, but we'll get started for you because we know it's busy. I think it's Thursday, so busy Thursday.
Yes.
But just keep in mind, if for anyone who wasn't able to attend, or if you want to get to any of the information we talk about later, this is a recorded session, and we will be sending out the recording afterward and posting it on both the Wheelhouse blog website and possibly AJ would know where they might put theirs. Maybe they haven't decided yet.
Everywhere. This is going to be everywhere. You're going to send this to all your friends and family, and it'll be great.
Perfect.
All right. So yeah, we'll get started with that. Thanks, John. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking some time out of your Thursday to be with us. We have a really, really good discussion, I think, that will benefit everyone here on a really interesting topic. So John mentioned this is trends to know before DARM. And the main thing we want to discuss today is how to master revenue management and distribution for your vacation rental, short-term rental, whether you're an owner or property manager. So this will be a really good time. You see these gentlemen before me. These are our two panelists, absolute legends in the space, Luca and John. I won't do too much of an intro because I could go on for a while, but we want to just get to know them a little bit. So guys, Luca, why don't we start with you? Give us a brief intro of yourself and journey and kind of what you guys do.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Luca Zambello, CEO of Journey. I've been in the hospitality industry for about 10 years. Had a property management company for almost a decade before launching Journey. And now we have launched Journey. Journey is a hospitality tech platform with the goal of fully automate operations and guest experience. We want to be a one-stop shop that act kind of like as a middleware for all the different tools that people need in order to run their short-term rentals or hospitality operation.
Awesome. And my name's John DeRelay. I'm the current head of sales at Wheelhouse. Some of you guys probably talked to me or someone on our team. If you haven't heard of Wheelhouse, we do dynamic pricing. That's a lot of people think about us, but we're really the first professional revenue management platform in the space. So we do a lot more than just provide market-based pricing. We provide a whole suite of tools that allow you to really optimize your pricing and revenue strategy and distribution strategy through our platform. So really excited to speak with you guys today. Been with Wheelhouse a while. Most of my career as a revenue manager, and excited to kind of talk about what's been going on this year. I'm gonna get rid of these slides too.
Amazing. Thanks for that, guys. And then everyone, Luca and John and myself are on LinkedIn, so feel free to search us up, add us, and connect. So we're gonna hop right into it, guys. Again, the topic of revenue management and distribution for your vacation short-term rental. This is a topic that has been quite the buzz, I think we can all agree on, over the past couple of years. More of a hospitality overarching question that I want to throw out to you guys to get started is, maybe Luca, we'll start with you getting your thoughts. Obviously, it's been a volatile couple of years for the space with the pandemic and a bunch of other economic factors affecting how pricing is done and kind of how the business is done. What do you think the future of being a successful owner or property manager in the vacation rental space looks like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's many things, but I mean, we are strongly believers in automation. So any type of automation. I will be more focused on the revenue and distribution side since it's more of the topic. But I think that's one of the aspects that you can automate is having a good pricing tool. But at the same time, there's some manual action that needs to be done, especially in the beginning of launching a listing. And I think it's a combination of multiple things. Number one is to be in as many distribution channels as possible, but at the same time, focus on the distribution channel that works for the type of properties that you are listing. For instance, if you have a 3-4 bedroom, you're managing 3-4 bedroom homes, whether it's a single home or multiple, you're obviously going to be targeting distribution channels that are different than somebody that is managing, let's say, like 1 or 2 bedrooms apartments in an urban setting. So really focus on the channels that work for you. And then something that very few people talk about is listing optimization. And what listing optimization is focusing on the title, focusing on the picture that you're using, and making sure that you really maximize that first impression engagement, because everybody talks about SEO for websites, but there is such a thing as kind of like SEO for OTAs, and so like when somebody lands on a specific listings, the higher the conversion rate, the more that OTA usually pushes you at a higher search result. So that's where pricing strategy also comes in. When you first launch a listing, you don't want to be priced above competition. You want to be priced below, get that engagement, and get those review up, and then start pushing a little bit of a higher pricing. But I think more importantly, having a good pricing tool and have a good revenue manager. I think those are really important tools, important things to have.
Right.
Yeah. It's I think, we can think about this in a general perspective and then also kind of like from a revenue perspective, because obviously as a revenue manager working in revenue, what I'm going to tell you the most important thing for you to do to be successful is have a good revenue management strategy. But what I know about talking to tons of different partners, working with the great folks at Journey and working with a lot of different kinds of companies, is it reminds me something of what the Wheelhouse CEO, Andrew Kitchell, sometimes says to our team is like, sometimes you have to let some fires burn, right? This is a complex space. We have operations, we have distribution, we have revenue, you have owners, you have relationships with guests. There's a lot going on. And I think what is really difficult for people, and this is whether you're a property manager or a software or anything, is trying to be the best at everything. You really can't. And so in some ways you have to decide to be successful, what is your main focus? What is your competitive advantage? And really double down on that. And then find ways to either make sure the fires don't burn out of control that you have to let burn, or like Luca said, find the automations that enable you to be successful in those, even if it's not your core competency. And so in an overall level, whether you're finding platforms that will help automate the things that aren't your core competency while you really take a manual approach on those that are, or maybe you find the right tools so that you can really dig into the level of detail you want on your core competency, that's really important for you as a business manager. On the revenue side, I think, the last couple of years have really shown us that revenue trends have not been as stable as we're used to. And so just relying on the way that you've always done it is a lot riskier strategy. I mean, even year over year, I think a lot of people are noticing that August is really volatile right now, and people, there's a lot of variability going on in a number of markets, even in Europe and the United States in the fall. You really need to up your game and make revenue management. If it's not a core competency, try to bring it up to a core competency. If it's something you haven't even paid attention to, you probably need to find some automation to help support you and react to what's going on in the market, because otherwise you're either going to be leaving money on the table or worse, underperforming.
Yeah, I think that's great. And throwing out a bunch of terms like we've heard automation, I think, John, you bring up a great point where because of the pandemic and a lot of different factors, pricing tools are built off of data and forecasting data and allowing you to really try to price your property at the best price. So Luca, from Journey's side with how we help clients, how does Journey do that? How do we take automation and pricing in this kind of post-COVID travel era, and how do we do that? Like, how do we help property managers and owners with that?
Yeah, I mean, the automation side, I mean, the main aspect here is having an efficient system, but at the same time, unfortunately, when it comes down to revenue management, you need to have a good pricing person in your team. So I think it's one of the few things that, yes, you can automate up to a certain kind of point, but you need to have those human inputs, especially on a post-pandemic environment, because the majority of pricing tools look at historical data. And if you just rely, like John said, specifically on historical data, when you have basically no consistency in year after year revenue, it can be problematic. So you want to have a really strong revenue manager, that it can be internal or external, that helps you out. Like that's one of the reasons why we decided specifically not to be just focus on software, but also add services on top of it, because we understand that in order for somebody to hire a revenue manager, it's a big burden, especially if you don't have like a large economy of scale. So we like to add that into our services specifically to help with that. So yeah, I mean, it's a different environment, so you need to adapt and you need to change your strategy. But curious to see also from John's perspective.
Yeah, I think when we think about, like, we're talking about trends here, and some of the things I've noticed over the last couple of years, and it kind of depends on where you are as a company, right? So one of the trends might be that, like, dynamic pricing or market-based data demand-based pricing is really becoming ubiquitous. It's not so much like that new thing that people are trying. It's kind of something that most people are leveraging or adopting at some level. And it means different things to different people. I think when dynamic pricing first came out, people were like, oh, the price is either right or wrong, and you're making a 100% black and white decision to use it or not. But really, when we look at the trends in industries that have had revenue management developed and matured for a lot longer, what you see in hotels, in airlines, is that they still use revenue managers. They have a lot, deeper depth of data. They have more mature models, a little bit different business models, but they still use revenue managers. And I think, part of the reason why Wheelhouse talks about themselves as a revenue management platform is we recognize that. We want to, your platforms, and this is probably true in both your operations platforms, any other parts of your business, your automations are not something that you always just set and forget. You set rules and you create a feedback loop because you're looking at what's going on in the market, what's going on with the consumer. You're referencing what's going on in your portfolio or what you think is going to happen, right? That's entrepreneurship itself. You have a vision about how things are going to go, and then you're kind of meeting in the middle, and you need tools that are going to enable you to do that, particularly if you're going to scale. A lot of these things that we do, you're able to do in a small scale pretty manually, but once you start getting 50, 100, 200, 500 units, you have to find new ways to do the same thing. Even if you don't change what you're doing, the way you do it has to change. And that's where automation really comes in, is like, how can I continue to execute on my strategy in a way that's efficient for my team as I grow?
Yeah, I think that's great. And again, just to highlight some key things that they said, everyone, which is really paying attention and trusting the team around you. And then if you don't have someone in place to really be that full-time revenue manager, there are companies like Journey who offer that support, kind of an extension of your team to help you grow and scale your business. Also, just kind of a general pulse, John, I want to get your thoughts on this. Airbnb released earnings this last week, and they announced across April, May, and June that the average daily rate for an Airbnb stay was $164, which is a 40% jump from the same time in 2019. So not only are we seeing this insane amount of growth in Airbnb, they just announced 4 million hosts, and their CEO said that there could be millions more. But they announced this 40% increase just over a couple of years. What do you think are some factors that are attributing to that with the insane jump in price? Because usually we're used to seeing maybe like a 5 or 8% increase over a couple of years. Like, to go to 40, that seems like a pretty significant jump from 2019.
Yeah, I mean, so let's split this, because I actually did want to talk about distribution. It's really interesting. Luca said something about like, starting to leverage these different channels for the different types of properties. That kind of convergence is interesting. I know you guys have some experience with that, so I'd like to touch on that. I'm always a little skeptical of these kind of big things. It's not that the data is inaccurate. It's just like, as a revenue manager, I remember like last August, we were in a COVID surge in the United States. Half of the United States was closed and Europe didn't take travel. So it would make sense that year over year in August or July that we would have, pretty big increases. So in some ways we have to like look at some of the annual, like that's why revenue management is so difficult right now, because
Right.
If we were looking in a 2018 to 2019 environment, that number would, like, you'd almost think something is wrong or one of the channels broke and everyone went somewhere else.
Right.
Like, that would be a huge coup. This year, it's like, well, there could be 20, 30 factors. And when you break that down to like your specific market, it's hard to know how that applies. What I do think is really positive about Airbnb is one of the trends we've seen from COVID is a massive adoption and normalization of this product type. It was kind of a niche product type before, so niche that people thought Airbnb invented it when it has existed for 50 years, 100 years, like since the beginning of time, right? Tons of people now look at a vacation rental when they're looking for a hotel. Whereas before, people would only look for a vacation rental if they knew to look for a vacation rental. That's a big moment for us. And it all comes around this concept of convergence. The consumer is no longer as segmented in thinking about the product in order to get to you. They don't have to think vacation rental to get to you. They just have to think travel. And what is coming along with that is other segments that were previously separated are starting to converge as well. Corporate travel, those people look at Airbnbs. Long-term stays. Airbnb has put out great data about their long-term stay, and that's now something that we have to integrate into our revenue strategy. I know some of you folks in Florida have been doing it a long time with your snowbirds. There's a lot of people in the urban space where this is like, to them, it seems like a brand new segment. Really what it is it's a convergence of segments. And I think this is where we can kind of touch on that element of really optimizing the channel for the kind of property type. I know Journey also includes some hotel inventory now within their user base. And we're starting to see that even on the Wheelhouse side, where some of these things that seemed like totally different verticals are actually existing in the same place for the consumer and now starting to exist in the same place in our tech stacks.
Yeah, and I want to...
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, sorry. I could not agree more. Honestly, the conversion is something that we've been seeing happening for a long time. It's just accelerated, and I think everyone that is playing is offering any type of I think technology service in this industry needs to adapt, because I think the people that are not adapting are going to be old tools, right? They're going to go out of fashion pretty quickly because like you said, John, we see literally the hotel space, the long term, the corporate and short term just kind of like coming together pretty fast. And we've seen that also obviously during the pandemic, when there's like a lot of units that were converted from doing short term to do corporate. But that trend stayed and is actually like accelerating. So from a revenue management standpoint, obviously, and you want to have a tool that allows you to be priced for all of them, because that's a way of maximizing your revenue, right? For instance, if you're in a very seasonable market, like you probably want to have short-term stays when on the peak of the season, but in the low side of the season, you might want to have longer stays, right? And leveraging corporate bookings, that can be one of the ways of doing that. And so at the same time, from your channel manager or your PMS, you want to have that flexibility and ability to be able to distribute different channels based on what your needs are, right? And those needs will change based on seasonality, based on the type of assets. So 100%, it's going to be something that is going to be a growing trend for sure in the future.
Yeah, and I want to touch back just a little bit here with you guys about this topic of distribution. I think you guys are bringing a lot of information to the table, so I just want to kind of focus in. If Luca, maybe you can define distribution versus distribution optimization for the chat, because I think some people, think, oh, just because I'm listed on Airbnb, I'm doing distribution, but am I, like you bring up about the optimization side of that. And I think that's super important. I think that's something that, where you mentioned, John, length of stays. Things are changing on these OTAs so rapidly, because what the guest is looking for on these specific channels like VRBO, Airbnb, Booking.com are all to service different needs. Where Airbnb also released, they said that the amount of time that people spend at an Airbnb is on the rise. And they said stays of 28 days, which we would look at as a long-term stay, 28 days or more, is actually the fastest growing trip length in the company. So it used to be, 1 to 3 nights was the what everyone was booking. And now Airbnb is saying, hey, long-term stays, that's on the rise. So Luca, maybe you could touch on that a little bit. Distribution versus distribution optimization. And talk a little bit about kind of what that means with these OTAs and just OTAs, online travel agency. That's just like a little acronym for that.
Yeah. So Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, that's what that's the major ones, but obviously there's many. Yeah, I think to talk about that, I think I want to mention something though that John mentioned. I think the complexity of our industry is growing exponentially year over year, because more and more people are joining, so it's becoming more and more competitive. So I think this is anodized me as a property manager for many years, where I understood at one point that I cannot do everything. It's impossible unless you really get that economy of scale and you raise quite a bit of capital, and then you're able to hire a really strong team. It becomes really hard to do everything on your own, right? So I think it's important to realize that, and realize that you need the support. And I think a lot of companies are coming up. I mean, we are one of them, but there's going to be many with that exact approach of being understanding that, hey, the complexity of this industry is growing exponentially. So we need to make life easier for people, right? So trying to understand everything, it's just not going to happen. You just kind of want to have a high level understanding of the topic, so you can select the right partners for you. I think that's the best way to grow and scale in this industry. That being said, when we talk about distribution versus distribution optimization, so distribution simply means is like how many channels you're connected to, right? So if you're connected to Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia for the main ones, and then you can have some corporate housing like Alto Vita, or there's many others, right? So that's distribution itself. But being connected to a channel, it means very little. Why I mean that is because in the end of the day, you want to be making sure that your listing is relevant in that specific platform. What that means is when somebody searches for a property for a specific destination, they need to be able to find your listing. And how that works is complex. It's made by many different things. One of the most important factors is revenue management, right? Like how are you priced compared to the competitions? But then there's other factors like the title, like the photography, and like the timing of your pricing, right? If you, like I was mentioning before, if you have a brand new listing and you start pricing it at what you want it to be priced at, it might be too early. So you want to wait and have a ramp up period and have actually that listing maybe sometimes listed 30% below your competition. So you accumulate a lot of bookings, a lot of relevance for that specific OTA, and at the same time a lot of hopefully positive reviews, and then you can start increasing pricing after that. That's an example of listing optimization, distribution optimization.
Yeah, when I was with well, let me start with one thing, because I really agree with what Luca's saying in terms of like this complexity. I've often said to folks that technology does not actually make anything easier. What it allows us to do is operate at a higher level of complexity. And that's really the story of this business. The reason why vacation rentals are blowing up is because technology has gotten to the point where now people can manage hundreds of individual things instead of buildings that had 100 of the same thing, right? The technology allows it doesn't make it easier for us. It makes it so that we're at a higher level of complexity and can actually do it. And that being said, there's risks there, right? It's complex. You have to make sure that you have the right team around you and you make the choices to use the best platform so that you can leverage it. Because the higher up we go, a little bit, it's a little bit harder to change. It's a little bit harder to adapt. When we talk about the distribution kind of aspect, it's actually a really huge part of revenue management. I don't think it's been as important the last 3 years because really the pricing itself has been so volatile, like people haven't cared too much. What we've seen is some companies are seeing really strong performance in their direct, but huge shifts back to OTAs, especially in the hotel world. I've been on a number of hotel conference calls, and the shift to OTAs that's occurred there is actually making hotels talk about deflagging from the major brands because they're just paying these brands and they're not getting the revenue. That's a really interesting trend, which, it's like a rising tide raises all ships. Like if more people are traveling, the OTAs are going to be the best way to get that business, but it's going to cost people too while that happens. So there's a little bit of like shifting power dynamics in the distribution phase. What it means for you as a property manager is there's a couple big things I think people consider at different times. The first is really just on the distribution before the optimization. And it's like, how many channels are you on? Most of us in the space, well, some of us probably remember like a company called FlipKey, right? But some of us don't. So that, before Airbnb got real big, there was a couple other companies. We all know VRBO, HomeAway, we know FlipKey, and there was a lot of different booking sites that were really effective. FlipKey, when I was with Stay Alfred, was a really strong booking site for us, and pretty much overnight they ruined their site, and it cut out like 15% of our distribution, which just hit our sales. Like it didn't go somewhere else, it just disappeared. Another one that we had was we realized that like 80% of our bookings were coming through VRBO. And that kind of started to spook us after the FlipKey thing, because it was like, what if something changes? What if they change a policy? What if they break something? We're really beholden to that. So when you look at your distribution makeup, do you have your eggs all in one basket? Is a question that you have to start to ask yourself. Airbnb has done a great job of enabling entrepreneurs in this space, but if you don't know, in Europe, they've already switched to a commission model like booking.com. So if you're looking and say, hey, I don't do booking.com and VRBO is too expensive at 5%, well, so you do Airbnb, you're going to be pretty surprised if in a year they're now charging you 15% for every reservation that comes in. And so it's very difficult to spin up distribution at the last minute, because like these guys said, you have to dip your prices, you have to build the listing up on the channel, you have to get reviews on it, you have to be like more than competitively priced if you're new in order to get people to look at it. And if you don't build that momentum, the channel just won't show it. They don't care. All they care about is that the guest buys something. They don't care that they buy your product. And so thinking early about like, how can we build up the infrastructure for these channels? How can, what can we sacrifice is a big element of the first part of like a distribution strategy that relates to revenue. Once you get to that, a lot of it's optimization. There's the soft things we know are important. Do your listings look good? Is your copy directed towards the right kind of customers? Those are all really important aspects, a little bit hard to judge. You also get into the aspects of cost. When do you want to drive bookings through certain channels so that you can make the best bottom line? Those are much more advanced subjects, but you really have to have the infrastructure in place to do it at all.
Yeah, so many good points there, everyone. I hope you got a little bit of what John was saying there. And there's a big saying that it goes, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And that is so important with your business to, like John said, if you have all of your business eggs in one basket, whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, and something happens and you're something shuts down or something's not working, something breaks, you're going to be hung out to dry, and they don't care, right? So I think that's one of the important things to understand, is that's why this is so important. Distribution optimization, making sure that your property is listed on as many channels as you can handle, and not just listed, but optimize on those channels as well. And that you're also putting in that time and effort to those maybe 2 or 3 channels that really are beneficial for your type of portfolio. So I think, John, to that point too, that's really, really important for maybe those listening in the chat to help grow their portfolio just as much as sustain what they're already doing with their business. So super, super important. I think that actually leads us into a good segue here about Luca. Maybe you can maybe show actually the audience a little something here with how Journey helps with that, and how Journey really helps with providing these integrations, and then also showing just some elements of what really the Journey dashboard allows a property management company or owner individual to do for their business.
Yeah, I think we have been talking about efficiencies and automations, and one of the things that we really focus as a company is exactly in that. As I said, my background is a property manager. We grew the company to a little bit over a couple hundred listings. And I think the major pain point for me was to be on top of all these different technologies and different trends of different things and increased complexity of the industry. So I made as my own personal goal the mission of creating a tool that will make what my hard job as a property manager was like, make it a lot easier for other property managers. And because I said, hey, if I fix a problem for me as a property manager, I think I can fix a major problem for a lot of other people. And so that's the reason why we launched Journey with that goal. And one of the things that frustrated us the most, outside of the fact that I think the barrier to entry for technology is pretty high. And why the barrier to entry of technology is pretty high is because of the integrations, because what do you use to integrate with this different platform, and do they communicate with one another? So this is kind of explained on how John and I started working together with Wheelhouse and Journey, and one really what we've built. And so I'm going to share my screen really quick to even show how we work together. And an example of creating something that is efficient. Obviously, like we have the regular dashboards that I think many PMSs have out there, but I don't like to call ourselves PMS. But for instance, this is an example of how we work with Wheelhouse. And when I talk about efficiency, is the fact that obviously you want to be able to do revenue management on your own, as well as having the help of the tool. But you want to make sure that you don't have to go to different dashboard all the time, and you want to be able to control everything to a single place. And so here's an example of, I select a specific listing. You see that it's powered by Wheelhouse. You have the pricing suggested by Wheelhouse for each day, and here are days that we specifically customize pricing for it, right? And so this is an example of having a really powerful tool, but at the same time being super efficient on how you utilize that tool. And we just did that with multiple different things like review management, which is something that, especially if you're talking about distributing many different channels, this is a good way of having a quick overview of what's happening in your listings and have the ability to respond directly to all of that. One of the major things that we have done is making access control system very accessible, which is one of the things that is very complicated, and get the ability to really connect your smart lock directly with a couple of clicks, and then assign them to a specific unit and have the system automatically generating codes for every time there's a guest checking in and checking out. These are all things that as property managers, like for me and my team, we spent infinite amount of hours to figure out how to do guest management and all of that. We attached all of this to a guest mobile app as well, and we have the ability even to directly integrate it with AutoHost, so everything, all guests can be verified directly on the platform. So for instance, this is a direct integration with AutoHost, so you can see every guest that has been screened. This is obviously not a real picture, but you get their ID and the verification directly on the platform, all in one place. And this is us, but I think this is a trend that is happening in the industry, and I think this is the only way forward, because the complexity is increasing exponentially year over year. I think the future of successful tech companies in the space are companies that are going to be working very hard to simplify the very complex already job of a property manager.
Yeah, that's great. Luca, thanks for that. Also really cool to see just the native integration that we have with Wheelhouse in the Journey dashboard. So, you guys saw that Luca is managing all that with one login on one system, which is really cool. And that's part of the reason we did partner with Wheelhouse, because after Luca, as a professional property manager for so many years, using so many different pricing solutions and A/B testing those different solutions versus Wheelhouse really came on top every time. And the cool thing about the Journey portfolio is that Journey software is used in hotels and vacation rentals, short-term rentals, and we use Wheelhouse for hotels as well. So I think Dylan actually had a good question about Wheelhouse. Maybe you can show just kind of from the back end side of Wheelhouse on how you guys gather data, what that looks like. Just maybe a quick little answer to his question.
Yeah, and then there's something else I want to touch on too, related to what Luca was saying. So, Dylan, it's a really good question, a little bit complex, and honestly, it's like a big part of our demo. But we are looking at all of the front end data from the major OTAs, particularly VRBO and Airbnb. We also have a unique bookings-based model. We looked at the most mature industries that really have to use transactions to estimate demand. We built one of those models very early. It started out using a lot of machine learning data. We had our own operations company built on top. So if you didn't know, the company Lyric was actually built on top of Wheelhouse. So there was a lot of training that was involved. Since then, we gather a lot more direct booking data from both clients, connected accounts. We're also the only partner of key data if you go to our website, usewheelhouse.com, we have also published in full the research behind our model. Super interesting if you like a technical read. If you don't, we have a webinar where our engineer will talk about it with you. But we have published all of this data because we want to be transparent about how we do this, and we know it's a complex piece. Going back to kind of what Luca said, I think, we're talking about trends before DARM, and this reminds me, we know big one is the volatility coming up. Second one is like, should you use these platforms? Should you have a revenue manager? Those are all going to come up at DARM. A trend that came up a lot at VRMA in the spring, if you were over in Chicago, was consolidation. And I have a feeling that you're going to hear that a lot when you're at DARM. A lot of people are talking about that, from the property perspective. You have Vicasa's, you have V-Trips. They're doing a lot of big consolidation. There's some growth equity in the space. But we also talk about it from the software side. And what's really interesting is you have these companies like Inhabit IQ, you have Track, you have a bunch of softwares that are really trying to approach this complexity problem through kind of building their own solutions for everything. And then, when I'm, as an outsider, so please correct me if I'm wrong, Luca, you guys have really taken an approach of finding the best and then integrating it. Because a lot of what you showed us is an integrated solution. It's trying to capture, like, how do we bring all these disparate parts and bring them together? I'd like to know a little bit more about your philosophy on that, either consolidation and integration approach, and how you guys are approaching it.
Yeah, I think what's very interesting is that both of our companies are were born from a management company, and I think that's very important. I think it's something that is lacking oftentimes in technology companies, that they think that they know what a host or a property manager needs. But my question is, have you ever managed 200 or 300 units? That's my first question. If you have, then you understand the pain points. I think it's very important, and having started from managing a handful of units to 300 units, that journey really, I think it says a lot of whoever built the software, because they understand, again, like a lot of the pain that the property managers have to go through. That being said, I think the way we've seen is that a lot of PMSs today are just trying to integrate with everything, and they just kind of leave it very much up to the user, the clients, to figure everything out. And we realize that, again, the complexity is increasing year over year. So you want to make things simple, because in the end of the day, I remember when I started a property management company, my goal was not to spend all day to figure out how to make it run, but I wanted to create an experience for the guests. And that was my motive to go there and starting this. And I said, you know what? I'm sure the majority of the people that start a property management company, they don't really care about technology. They have to use it because otherwise they understand they're going to be left behind. But that's not their motive on why they started this business in the first place. So I think just like we are coming up with this solution where it really reduces the barriers to entry for whoever is a property manager, and make things a lot easier and a lot more accessible, and make property management more fun at the end of the day. I think we're probably first of many companies, because the full customization and allowing you to connect with anyone, it also comes with a big cost, which is complexity, which is inefficiency, which is millions of bugs, finger pointing. I mean, whoever's been a property manager here, and even of a single property to whatever amount of properties you manage, I'm sure you have encountered the problem of whose fault it is, and nobody's ever knows whose fault it is. Is the PMS fault or is the tools you're connecting with? That's one of the other things that, to me, when I was a property manager, it was one of the most frustrating things ever. And so I think having a tool that just chooses the best and chooses to work with them, it accomplishes multiple things. One, it obviously makes it efficient and easy to access. But I think another thing that accomplishes is that enhance the tool itself. one of the things we heard back from many people is say, you know what, working with us, one of the integration that's coming is with Breezeway. Breezeway within your platform is a better Breezeway. How to host in your platform is a better how to host, because everything communicates in real time, and we choose one single partner and we choose to work real strongly with them and create a native integration versus like wanting to do them all. And again, I talk about us because it's us, but I think this is going to be a massive trend in our industry for sure, because people are just tired to having to figure everything out. You have to be an expert in everything. You have to be an expert in revenue management, in technology, access control, uh, be a really good host, guest communications. Like, how do you do it all, right? And do it perfectly.
Right. How do you do it all, and how do you do it perfectly? That's a question for life for everyone, I think. Yeah, Luca, really good points there. Talking about the system. So we're approaching the 45-minute mark. I'd like to open it up to whoever's left in the chat. If there's any questions for either John or Luca about anything that they maybe mentioned, we have a couple minutes to kind of take some questions. Then if there's no questions, we'll wrap up with just some key takeaways and what the guys are excited for this next Get DARM. So any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll give just a couple seconds here. John, any comments on that from Luca while people might be thinking of some questions?
Let me think for a second. I think, really what it sounds like is the trend that we've been talking about throughout this entire webinar is complexity. And how do you deal with complexity and finding that balance between technology, automation, and grit, I guess is what we can say. And I think the short answer to that is you're going to have to leverage all three. But you choose where to pick your battles, right? And that's the key on choosing these partners and building your business. Is it's not that you're not going to like put in the elbow grease on certain aspects, but you want to make sure that the aspects you're putting elbow grease are the places where you do the best and where you get the best return on it, and then you can automate some of the things to get to the best point you can without having to spend your time on it, and then sometimes let some fires burn. And that's going to be different for every property manager. For some people, like Luca really wants to provide the guest experience. Where he's going to put the elbow grease on and where he wants his team to put the elbow grease on is on that guest experience. So he finds teams like Wheelhouse and trains his revenue managers to work with them and leverage that. For someone like me, I am a revenue manager. I did get into it for the technology, and I don't really want to talk to the guest. Like, I'm going to put the elbow grease and find a platform that really enables me to do a lot of things on the revenue management side, and hope that our other teams or our other software solutions can kind of handle the other pieces that I don't want to focus on. That's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, so good. And I think too, John and Luca, to your guys' point about automation, and automation really helps with those things that you don't want to put the elbow grease on. That allows you to really free up time and space for yourself to focus on the things that you want to focus on, things that you enjoy in your business. We have a question here from Nicholas. Nicholas said, going back to distribution optimization, is anyone studying that from a keyword perspective or a platform shared data? So I think Nicholas is asking more about listing optimization, keyword optimization on these listings. Is anyone studying that? Has anyone figured that out? That's a great question. Luca, you want to maybe give Nicholas some insight?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, and these are questions that people need to ask. Because I think very, very few people have started looking into listing optimization from that perspective. When we were a property management company, and still today, when we help some of the hosts, have really spent a lot of time into it. One of the things we found is like looking at data like AirDNA, and and depending also on the channels, so there's other tools that you can be utilizing, and looking at. We always like to look at the top performers and what they did in specific markets. And like, if you don't have a very competitive market, it's good to look at top performers in very competitive markets and understand what set them apart. It can be things like photography. It can be things like specific keywords. Or a specific way on how they write descriptions. So there's no tools today to do exactly what you said, but there are there are kind of like very rough ways of doing it. But I think in the future there will be specific tools that are going to be helping you. But as of right now, I think my best advice is go look who's the best of the best in the most competitive markets, and look who's the best of the best in the specific markets you want to target, because you for sure can find some inspirations on what you can adjust in your listings.
I think too, if I could just add on to that for Nicholas, I think it's a very, very important thing. So keyword optimization and how that plays into your listing is very important. What a lot of people do in this space is they A/B test with different language and different titles. Airbnb has different, parameters versus VRBO and how you can do a title. Can you use emojis? Can you not? How many characters can you use? So figuring out all of the requirements and like how you can really utilize language. And then like Lucas said, doing research on the top performers in that market, Googling that, using tools like AirDNA, which helps, I think goes into Daniel's question, Daniel's new to revenue management. Good educational resources I can reference. John, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I know AirDNA is a great platform, great tool in terms of data, resources to see the market, and kind of, all the way down to the zip code, really. John, any other tools that, or maybe resources that you've used or that you could recommend to the chat?
Yeah, I mean, Wheelhouse, most of the pricing algorithms have some kind of market data that we're providing. I mean, we have to in order to provide the revenue suggestions that we provide. The big kind of pure data companies are going to be Transparent, AirDNA, and Key Data. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these are still going to be revenue and pricing. Search data is still a black box. So most of the real, search data is being owned by Expedia, Booking.com, and Airbnb, and they do not share that proprietary data. I've heard some rumors that Expedia and VRBO might consider opening some of that black box up for use by companies like Wheelhouse in the next couple of years. It's an unknown. Another thing that, like, we talk about trends, like Google's been experimenting in this space for a long time. They actually have the capability to totally usurp that data environment that has been proprietary to the OTAs. Right now, it's not super available. We don't have access to search data. Hotels don't either. One thing I would say from the keyword perspective is if you're thinking about keywords on your individual listings, that kind of SEO isn't usually very effective in our space. Sometimes you want to make sure your SEO is good for your company so that people can find you if they're looking for a spot. But at the end of the day, Booking.com, Expedia, and Airbnb are going to outcompete you on your listings. And so let them spend the money. What you want to do is really look at, in that content, not so much the keyword, but how are guests engaging with that? And I think a good way to start is Airbnb. Go look at their top listings that they recommend when you aren't searching for anything, and read the voice and the language. Airbnb has really pioneered this aesthetic approach to shopping for travel, because if you go to booking.com, it's not like a super beautiful experience. And when you think about your own voice, just try to take the qualitative aspects from that and develop one for yourself. See how they're describing the property. Andrew, our CEO, always talks about describing experiences, not just describing features as a major part. But Airbnb is really the spot where that's been pioneered. And I think they know it. So the listings they choose to highlight on their website are going to be examples of what they're trying to see in their algorithm.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think there's really, really good insight there. So just to wrap up, guys, John, I want to go to you. Where can people find you next week at DARM, and find Wheelhouse as well? And also maybe one thing you're excited for next week for the show.
Sure, yeah. I don't know where I'll be. We have a booth, so come talk to myself or our team. We're super friendly, really, really scrappy team and very approachable. I'll probably be wandering around in a pink shirt or something, and I have long hair, so just look for me. Come up and chat. What I'm most excited for is DARM is just great in general. I'm doing 2 advanced revenue management sessions. So if you look at the sessions and you want to join, I'll be doing some on how to conceptualize and document your revenue management strategy, and how to use a pickup approach based revenue management, which is actually something we've worked on and developed with the Journey revenue management team quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think to answer your question to Daniel, probably coming to DARM is the probably best place to start. And I mean, as best tools, obviously we chose Wheelhouse, and I can tell you we did a lot of A/B testing. We're talking about specifically A/B testing, but again, I recommend to do also your own research. But DARM is a great place to start. Yeah, we'll also be at DARM. We'll also host a panel, which I don't remember what we'll be talking about.
Yes. Journey will be a DARM as well. We're sponsoring a couple different happy hour breaks, so you'll see the Journey logo around, and then Luca will be on a panel at 2:30, I believe, on Wednesday in a think tank talking about kind of new entrants into the vacation rental industry. So I'll be there as well. Luca will be there. John will be there. Please come and say hi. Luca, one thing you're excited about for next week?
Well, just to meet a lot of people and to meet a lot of the people that have been having questions that I met like virtually. It's always great to meet people in person.
Excellent. John, why don't we throw up that contact slide to close? On behalf of myself, Luca, and John, and then our companies, Journey Inc. and Wheelhouse, we want to thank everyone for attending. This will also be available, John, as he mentioned earlier in the show, for viewing purposes. Later on, we'll have this published. It'll be on the Wheelhouse blog. I think you mentioned, John. Journey will have it on our website as well, and then we'll share this on a couple other platforms. But thank you, everyone, for coming. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday into Friday. And then for those of you who are coming to DARM next week, we're excited to see you. And thanks so much for attending.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.